Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is a follow-up recording for those of you who attended the AI ethics session a few days ago. For those who couldn't make that session, this is an opportunity for you to listen in to a brief overview, if you like, of what was covered. And so it's a hot topic, as we'll discuss in this. And so every 2 weeks there are topics around this theme of AI and what's happening. So myself, Bally Binning, what I do is cover some of those topics, such as the one we'll be looking at, and other tools that are emerging. And we have the opportunity of actually practicing these and having some feedback, that type of thing. So for anyone interested, those run on Wednesdays, and I'll say a little bit about that at the end. So listen through if you're interested, and they are free to join. So this particular topic, AI and ethics, huge topic and pivotal moment. So some of you will be asking lots of questions around this, I'm sure. For those that are attended, certainly had a lot to kind of share on that during that session. So it's a pivotal moment. You would have seen the works of Tegmark, and we had also Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom, for example, from the University of Oxford, where they kind of been having these debates. But we're seeing it where governments are taking action, and we are starting to see this a lot more, and we're going to see a lot more because it is a critical time to be thinking about this. So one, AI, pivotal moment, it is transforming our world in an unprecedented pace. You're noticing it, I'm sure, and has been transformative equally, but at the same time, there's a lot happening, right? And we're noticing that. So there'll be one tool and there'll be another one, and are companies utilizing them, or are they not? What's happening behind the scenes? So the decisions we make today and the actions that we take will really inform the way things are going to be shaped in the future. So it is that we are the kind of architects of the future and the way things will be moving forward. So during that live session, and as we're not live today and I'm doing this kind of post session, we certainly had a lot of questions, and there was lots of provoking thoughts. So for those of you who are listening to this afterwards, I hopefully you go away with asking some of those questions and looking at sort of what does this mean for me in and where I am in my space. So for those people I work with, for example, leaders, for them, if they're not taking action, what does it mean? And so it is going to be a collective path forward. So everybody, we are all in it together. Put it that way. So some of the questions, now you will have seen this yourself. The heart of the discussion is, do you trust AI? Like, so when you go into those tools, especially the LLMs, or any other kind of tool at the moment, kind of people that have been coming to those sessions with myself, we're looking very much at the generative AI. That's the kind of an area that I've become passionate about and very much enjoy kind of utilizing, but really understanding those deep questions about this black box kind of AI system. So you put things in, and the kind of output that may be produced based on how it's been trained. We, of course, we know that there's billions of parameters that it's trained by, but how can we trust the thing that it's kind of giving us? And you will have seen this yourself. There will be lots of instances where you've given it a prompt or you've asked it to do something and it's produced something that you're thinking, well, actually, that's kind of very anglicized, right? So are we kind of seeing that? So what are the societal implications? And yes, these models start understanding kind of you understanding it's got a memory, and unless you turn that off, but it sort of understands your behaviors. So the more we kind of show up in this world and behave in a kind of ethical kind of way. So those are the sort of questions that a lot of the research has been asking about, like how are these tools being used? Like so anyway, that black box system, just kind of cautionary in the sense that, can we believe everything it produces? And there's been all kinds of discussions around hallucination. It produces this, and it's kind of, scraping the internet. It's picking out things that may or may not resonate. And sometimes we may follow that thinking that's the way forward. So we've got to really ask those deep questions and not just kind of take the surface answer. So there's a lot around that. And in some of the sessions for those people that have been there, we've been looking at kind of prompting and really understanding what that looks like and how we kind of steer it as opposed to it steering us. So lots of discussions and lots of food for thought. Okay, so thinking about that, asking those questions, can I trust AI? And if you've got examples of that, please feel free to share. We'll be opening those discussions up in the next few months to come for sure, because this topic is definitely going to be with us for it's here to stay. There's kind of the whole kind of if we think about the branch of ethics, it is a branch of ethics, ethical practice now that's emerging. There's a whole team, and we want more of these people kind of coming on board and thinking and asking those questions. So we want to have, so you will have seen this with tools where there's this explainability. So does the tool kind of understand, or does it give me the reasoning? Now we're seeing the new kind of emerging tools. It gives us the reasoning, and depending on the tool or the model you're using within that particular tool, so depending on which model you're using, it may be giving you the reasoning, and sort of you're like, oh, okay, so it's giving me kind of it's telling me what it's thinking, so now I kind of can make that decision based on that. But it's kind of giving you some of that stuff. It doesn't mean that it's the right stuff. So those are the kind of discussions and decisions as the user of the thing that you're using, you're going to be asking yourself. So for leaders, for the people that I support, I will be kind of thinking about like asking them those questions, as in, okay, so how is it informing its decision? And these, do they align with the culture, to the ethos of the company, that type of thing. So more we have transparency, more we have these open discussions, and more we start thinking about involving stakeholders, those kind of utilizing and those that we serve, and saying how these decisions were made. So I understand I'm opening up this kind of discussion, if you like, and there are models and frameworks already in place. But more we get people around the table having these discussions as we build and as we start implementing and actually using these tools on the surface level, yes, you can get it to write an email, right? Everyone's saying utilizing it in that sense. Yes, they are, right? So, yeah, simple, you're getting them to, you're telling them when a meeting is, what's expected, and kind of some of the follow-ups, right? So you've got sort of, date venue, that type of thing, but really simple stuff, right? That surface level stuff, we know it is good for that, and it's efficient and it does that. But kind of more in-depth discussions where we're really getting to the heart of the matter and thinking about so we had some of the attendees the other day, some of you perhaps watching this now, looking at kind of writing content. Does it resonate with my voice? Where's the kind of decision, as in where's my voice in this? And actually, how do I know it's diluted? Has it diluted my message? Well, actually, one of the pieces that I wrote a few days ago is about kind of co-authoring and understanding and having your voice, but and knowing that you are at the end the chief editor of the content that you put out there, right? Your credibility, your name, and all the other stuff that goes with it. So as leaders, utilizing these tools, having an understanding of how people are using these tools. And you may have seen a couple of weeks ago an article in the BBC where they talked about employees utilizing these tools, but employees not having any policy is in place and actually having any guidance on how to use these tools. Perhaps they haven't made their decisions. Perhaps there's a lot of red tape in a lot of organizations that haven't really got around to actually even putting this in place. So people are using them, and so, it's everyone needs to get on board. Everyone needs to get on board and have these open discussions and really be clear and understand there will be biases. And we've seen these biases, right? We saw the case with Amazon, which was in Dustin's article in the Reuters some years ago, where they scrapped this tool, which unfairly kind of there was like a recruitment within Amazon. Of course, they scrapped the tool. It's no longer in use, but the purpose was that it was discriminating against women, right? So there were biases, and we do see these. So some of these biases, you may say, yes, I'm not biased because I don't live by that, but actually these are embedded within our systems. And if we're not careful, these will just amplify even more because it will just feed off that, and it will just kind of worsen the situation. And actually, those are some of the dangers that we'll kind of need to really be mindful of, because if we've got certain people, at the end of the day, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So we've really got to know how we're training these tools, what data are we giving it, and how's it understanding that. So if we look at the core principles and values of AI development and start thinking about these kind of things, and if we think of OECD and the World Economic Forum, they've kind of started putting these questions, back in many years ago. If you think about it, before kind of where it all came, when Sam Altman's, OpenAI released ChatGPT, we have had this for a number of years. So we've seen this emerging, but now it's a real pivotal moment because actually just the kind of pace things are moving, as we mentioned at the beginning. Now, if we kind of think about some of these developmental and start thinking about some of the principles that we bring into play and start thinking about these, is one, how do we embed values into our AI systems or in our AI processes? So that kind of respect, right? How do we kind of train it so it kind of understands us? So rather than making these really quick kind of decisions where kind of it's informing, it's really kind of the core and essence of kind of what we stand for, especially for business owners and leaders. Those I work with, really kind of honing that in, and then a care. How are we going to be caring and how are we going to be monitoring and who's responsible for monitoring and knowing that we've got checks on this, we're correcting, we're course correcting, we're looking at how these systems are being utilized within organizations, as leaders, perhaps for those in solo entrepreneurs, from some of the people that I connect with, how am I embedding that so it really understands me and understands kind of who I am as a human. And, of course, we've had those discussions about like what it means to be human today. Like, but and also protecting, but what happens then? The third point here is cost of failing ethical AI standards. So what are the implications of that? So, so what does that mean? And having those systems and really thinking about these, and hence that kind of notion of bringing other people involved, like the stakeholders, and really knowing, okay, so when things go wrong, like, face recognition, or perhaps people have been, there's been biases, if we maybe we've seen these. I've seen this in recruitment already. I mean, HR personnel really need to start be thinking about kind of their recruitment processes and kind of looking at some of those CVs that perhaps come in, and once people are in the system too, right? So it kind of goes across the system. It's an organization. So the key thing is that we've got also accountability. We've got this and those that are driving this, but actually have a responsibility within organizations. So, of course, this is kind of a really, really big topic. And it is having bringing those questions to the surface, and not just kind of having this manual where you kind of have it and then you put it away and go, right, yeah, we've done it. Like I had someone the other day going, yeah, oh, yeah, it was actually over there. It was on that shelf. I'm like, yeah, that's all very well. It's like any form of training, as a coach, I've seen people attend training, and what do they do once they've done the training? Yes, we're all looking great. It's like coming back from a holiday. Everyone's like, yep, raving to go. And then suddenly there are cracks, there are things that just haven't been followed through. So definitely having systems in place, that monitoring, and it's going to be an ongoing process. So really understanding who's going to be doing that. And then of course that having that fairness, having that justice, and aligning that with kind of independence and allowing people to have the autonomy as well, So yeah, there's work involved, of course, right? So some of the kind of challenges, right? So we're looking at the privacy element, okay? So it is about kind of how we innovate. So those in the kind of creative field, there's a lot of that coming about, sort of questions around kind of, ownership of content that's AI generated. We had, so one attendee talked about kind of having, we've seen this at the Washington Post where they do have examples of this was AI generated, so we cite and give the AI kind of credit for kind of producing this stuff, right? And then there's that line between kind of how much did he support me, kind of like, okay, is it still my voice? Has it lost my voice? That type of thing. And so yes, I kind of keep going on about that, but there are kind of privacy concerns around this, right? So likes of bins, if you so any of this literature, this has been informed by literature. There is literature in this, just to kind of a point. If anyone is interested, of course, you can reach out to me. There are lots of articles that kind of support kind of this kind of where this helped inform my research here for this presentation. So what about building in mechanisms that sort of constant? You've got these self-correction if these biases pop up, right? Okay, you've noticed this. What are some of those things? How about sort of things of misuse? We're seeing that with various tools, right? So I've had conversations with people in Brazil with, 11 Labs. It's not just in Brazil, but we had a few examples there where I've had people speaking about what's happened where perhaps people aren't aware that, these voice cloning, that happens where someone's calling and how do they know it's not their child in another country, that type of thing, right? So we're seeing those examples of that happening. And now, of course, as a user, you know, we're noticing that everybody's using it, right? So I use that example where it be an individual using it, but for those in leadership, this is the time to kind of really be mindful and be aware that these things happen, and so learning and having those examples of there might be you know, we had one guest the other day speaking about kind of when it goes into the hand, into wrong hands and how detrimental it can be. Um, but we've also got the other point, how we've got the case where we can diagnose people a lot quicker. We're seeing this in the healthcare profession too, right? So, I mean, it's going to open up the doors to many people that wouldn't have access to treatments that would have perhaps, would have been on the bottom of the list, perhaps, So there are discussions around that too, the what if factors. Those are amazing, the what if factors and getting people around the table and having the implications of perfect AI profiling on society. So knowing what if factors are our behavior, how we show up. And we've seen this not just most recently, we've seen this in a number of cases where, we purchase something ourselves and the next minute it kind of understands our behavior. And that's been happening for a really long time. And the profiling element is when people are profiled in the justice system, where certain groups could be profiled. So the impact of that, and we've seen that previously, where there's been, with Black Lives Matter, that type of thing. So mitigating risks and building responsible AI. So the question of human-centric AI, what does that mean? And what does it mean to be human? As Nick's Bostrom's article of superintelligence asks about, he really goes, he's a philosopher actually, and then he goes into kind of these discussions and like implementing AI, and we bring other people in, but what does it mean to be human today? What does that look like? Lots of questions around that, human-centric, with kind of people working. There's lots of remote work, and we've seen this more and more. Obviously, it's more prevalent now than it was pre-COVID, and technical sustainability. There is going to be that question of like, how do we, then there's the investment part too, right? So, there's people investing in it, those that are doing this. Now are we seeing with disrupting structures that would have been somewhat different, and hence this question of do we rush in and do it? The questions would be, rather than rush in and do it, really ask those questions about what are we going to invest in and how is it going to impact our businesses as leaders? And this is growing exponentially, of course. And we will be seeing that. It's a bit like when you'd pay a fortune to have a photo taken some years ago. Now it's all kind of become free. Like a lot of these tools are available, but it's understanding that, how we responsibly use these and realize that some jobs will no longer be those jobs there. If any of you read Sam Altman's work on the three observations, it's an interesting read. I can certainly share it so you can reach out to me, and you can also have a look at just Sam Altman's three observations and talks about what it will mean, things will look like, what structures will look like, and certain jobs will definitely, as we said, the very simple things that can be automated will no longer be there. So we've got those questions, right, to consider too. And what about interpreting what the output produces? So really being critical of kind of what it produces and don't just kind of take it for what it says. I've seen this so much, like because it said it, like, okay, what does that mean? So this whole idea of like, okay, what about triangulating, right? So look at your literature, look at where this information is coming from. So it's understand that AI does have its prerequisites, and of course, some of that training has been provided. And so when we've got like closed sources and open sources, there's been lots of discussions around kind of some of the bigger we've seen this whole thing at the moment with Quen AI and DeepSeek, and so those discussions have been happening if you've been following those. Okay, so we've got these closed sources. It means information is protected in this way. So yeah, be mindful of like where and how you using these tools and really understand what that means. And ignorance doesn't pay, as they say, right? And a security. So there's this element of like security where some people just don't have access to these tools still, and then the ease of use. So there are trade-offs. So we want people, and the key thing is that we are all in it. We are using it. So let's get on board and start using these tools, but just be mindful of how we're using it and having systems in place so that we are thinking about those ethical questions and having frameworks and having people responsible in taking those actions. So we've seen it in cases where likes of bins and others have reported where there's been failure recognition, and so they've algorithms which kind of, they're just because those have been so embedded within that, there's this inequality. I mean, this exists, right? This is real and it does happen. So, what are we doing to ensure that we step up and have this equity? And so, it requires us to really think about kind of having these legal standards. I mean, if we kind of sort of people could be sentenced wrongly based on algorithms. This is kind of the stuff that where there's the danger aspect of it as well. So being kind of mindful of what that means. So future profiling, what it means in the world of leadership. So think about kind of strategically preparing those that you lead, or perhaps if you're a leader yourself, understanding that there are these rapid AI advancements, and thinking carefully through thinking carefully through the implementation, what that means, and having it documented, and so stakeholders. So we mentioned that at the beginning where we talked about engagement. So, informing decisions. So when I say stakeholders, I do mean humans that are kind of your customers, those that you serve, bringing those on board and having those discussions, and having systems in place where you've got sandboxes, cases in where in in Norway, for example, where they've got these regulatory sandboxes. So we've got this using technology, and there's frameworks around this, using technology and allowing us to use it, and then we're testing it, right? So we're allowing this, we've got the tools, but it's allowing us to regulate it, right? So rather than kind of just leaving it kind of open and going, yeah, we're just going to use it, but allowing understanding, are there things that we need to be mindful of? Of course, there will be. And are there things that are being missed as a result? What information, what data has been captured, and how has it been trained? That type of thing. So just kind of a final note, and of course we did go into this a lot more in our call. So we're going to be looking at those decisions, how our decisions or what we do today will shape how AI and our society and future will be. Let's kind of openly have these discussions. I will be kind of sharing some of the frameworks that's come about through the research and the urgency of kind of really asking those questions. And it is going to be about ethical leadership. That's going to be the question. What are we doing at the moment to ensure that we've got people on board who understand how to use these tools, understand what the tools actually do as well, and rather than discourage them in using them, ensure that they are using them, but the same token ensuring that they're using them in an ethical way that aligns with the values and cultures and what you stand for in your business, right? So and it's going to be a collaborative project. It's not going to be just one person like myself here talking about it, right? It's going to be us taking action. There's one thing kind of talking about it, but really ensuring that AI does kind of, serve humanity ethically because it's at the heart of what we do, right? All those what we've seen, how it can go so wrong, and bringing people on board and understanding that if we don't kind of embrace this and really become open to having that kind of way of learning about these tools, but actually understanding the implications if we don't get on board, you will be so left behind. Now, I know that we'll be looking at kind of communications next time. I'll be sharing more about that, and it will kind of be leading up to International Women's Day. And as I said, my name is Bally Binning, and it's all about igniting change, realizing potential, and shape the future. And go do that. And I look forward to connecting with you. And come and join us. And thank you, and have a great rest of your weekend from me.